continues to be hostile towards our children, even more so towards children with disabilities who've been denied the basic right to education. More than 500,000 with disabilities have never been to school. This is a sorry indictment on our society. It must be fixed now. Tonight on Child Protection Week, we discuss how. Joining me in the studio is the Chief Director for Curriculum Policy at the Department of Basic Education, Dr. Moses Simelane. And from Disabled Children's Action Group is Mkhadi Rakabe. Thank you very much for joining us. Mkhadi Rakabe, just tell us what the situation is. Paint us a picture of what many of these disabled children go through.
These children are going through a difficult situation. Reasons being there is a lot of discrimination at the schools. There is no resources at the ECD centers. And again, the teachers there or the caregivers, they have lack knowledge of disability.
And the discrimination comes from children and possibly the caregivers, possibly the teachers as well, all levels?
Both.
And why do you think there's such a lack of understanding? Why is there such a lack of respect?
I think it's attitude, and it needs to be fixed as well. And another thing is being not educated, not knowing how to do with the children with disability. And another thing could be the parents as well, because some parents are denial, some parents don't accept the children, some parents do accept the children, but they are not accepted at schools. Then it's a problem there.
Wow, so
much as a Disabled Children Action Group, we having those planning of training the parents to understand and to accept the children with disability. Okay,
Dr. Moses Simelane, why is this happening at our schools?
Well, it should start from, education, advocacy campaigns, informing our communities about disabilities, because I think most of our communities still hold on to different myths around disabilities. And also,
but you're duplicating this in schools. It shouldn't be happening in schools. If it's happening in communities, it shouldn't be happening in schools.
It shouldn't be happening in schools, but this whole awareness should actually start from the home. If there's a child with a disability, from the home setting, we should advocate a situation where, as parents, we need to take responsibility. When you realize that your child is actually experiencing developmental delays, you've got to do something about it, right from early ages. So that by the
something about it would be being able to send your child to school eventually and be looked after there and respected.
Yes, definitely. But the education will not only end at the home situation, but we also are advocating very strongly on the rights of children with disabilities, especially within the education sector, which is why we continue to build capacity, both in terms of our teachers, preparing our schools to be receptive to all children, including children with disabilities. And we also are working with different government departments so that every government department will have to play the role. For instance, there are issues of transport, to transport children between home and school. That is where the Department of Transport also comes into the picture. Every department has got to play the role. There are also health-related issues, which is where the Department of Health should come in. So dealing with issues of disability requires an integrated approach. We need all hands on deck so that as basic education alone, I don't think we can make visible strides.
But why are still 500,000 children not going to school? If all of these changes have happened, and it sounds good, but it's not filtering through.
I guess I don't want to argue much about statistics, because for me, whatever the number is, it's actually indicative that there is a problem out there. So our attitude towards that is to say, given the numbers that have been reported, actually the statistics that you are quoting is actually a 2015-16 statistics. And this statistics actually comes from Statistics South Africa during the general household surveys, which is mainly an estimate. It's an estimate figure. During 2016...
Okay, I'll come back to you. I mean, what are you seeing changes? Have you seen adequate changes happening within the schooling system, the sort of conversations with disabled children and their families?
I would say the changes is there, but very slow, because there are still mishaps that are happening. Just 2 days ago, while I was having a conversation with the field workers, they were just saying one of the children have been chased away from the school, and the mother decided to keep the child at home. So that means there is a problem. There's still a problem there. And then I think the problem is the teachers, the caregivers, they lack knowledge how to deal with children with disability.
And what about seeking some alternative system? Would possibly, I mean, obviously you want to deal with schooling first, would something like homeschooling work? Would separate facilities be more effective?
But it has to start with the children, I mean, with the parent. As I just say, some of the parents are denial, some of the parents are overprotective, some of the parents have got fears. So we just have to work together with the department as an organization of parents of children with disability.
What sort of infrastructure is in place?
Well, in terms of infrastructure, I can start from the legislation, maybe without talking about the infrastructure in terms of the built environment, but let me start from legislation. Our legislation is actually in place, which actually talks to the issue of the basic right for every child to access education. And then on the basis of that, we have therefore developed policies that are translating legislation into practice. I can say that some of the developments have gone to a point where government has actually intervened by making budget available so that we can mobilize every child that is out of school. For instance, we've got a program for learners or for children with severe to profound intellectual disability, which we started in 2017. And it's ongoing, where National Treasury has put a lot of budget, I mean hundreds of millions. So through that program, we've been able to mobilize out-of-school children from special care centers where they are being cared for and they are not given education. We've developed an education program for them, and we are in the process of actually placing them from the special care centers to schools so that they will have proper education.
And obviously this is incredibly important, because if you don't go to school, you stop becoming an active member of society, contributing to society, don't you? I mean, we have lost generations then.
Yes.
Well, yes, that is very true. But I think we need to recognize the fact that from the side of government, I think a lot of developments have been put in place. A lot of measures have been put in place. Like I've talked about issues of legislation. And we are even moving towards, I mean, with this new administration, the 6th administration, the plans for the next 5 years, for instance, is to accelerate access to education for children between birth and 4-year-olds, because there is a huge backlog in that regard. And with the advent and the pronouncement that was made by the state president during the State of the Nation address in February this year, where he actually committed to the South African nation that the early childhood development is going to be moved from social development to basic education. So this is a strategic move whereby, as education, we are going to come up with some measures, even coming up with norms and standards for how centers should look like and the quality of education that needs to be provided, whilst at the same time accelerating access to education from early years so that those children with disabilities are actually exposed to early stimulation programs, so that by the time they go to school,
there are efforts to be made.
There have been interventions in that regard.
Well, thank you very much for talking us through that, Dr. Moses Simelane and Mokhadi Rakabe. Thank you.
Thank you as well.
That's our show for tonight. News is next.